Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Dan Abramovici, an actor and filmmaker you might recognize from his 2014 feature Ben's at Home, or from a decade of appearances in TV series as varied as Murdoch Mysteries, Man-Seeking Woman, Clarice, Hudson and Rex, and Star Trek Short Treks, where he played a green guy. He's also made a really moving short film, Limnal, starring friend of the show, Aaron Poole. You should seek that out. Dan wanted to talk about Supercop, Stanley Tong's even more amped up third chapter in the Police Story series. It's the one where Jackie Chan's cocky Hong Kong police officer is sent to mainland China and teamed up with a local officer who's even better at the fighting, kicking, and punching than he is, because of course she is. She's Michelle Yeoh. You know that viral clip of Michelle Yeoh jumping a motorcycle onto a moving train? This is the movie where she did that. But this is also the movie where Jackie Chan hangs off a helicopter. So fasten your safety harness and meet the cops who can't be stopped. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I moved to Canada in 1992. I didn't speak any English. And my grandma would come and, babysit me, like hang out for that first year for the warm months, spring to fall. And she also didn't speak much English, but she was a huge cinephile. So, that first fall, I went to TIFF with her and we saw Baz Luhrmann's Strictly Ballroom.
Yeah.
And that movie, it this sounds so weird. I was like 10, but it made me feel seen in some way. It made me feel like I found my own kind of weird thing, me and my grandma, right? And then, then she would play Buster Keaton for me and old musicals, the old Gene Kelly stuff. And I found myself, I loved that, but I was also, a young boy. I loved action. I was a big fan of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time. And my first friend was a kid named Joseph Wong, and he had a laser disc, and his family's from Hong Kong. And I went over to his house and he showed me this film called Supercop, Police Story 3.
Yeah.
I didn't understand a word, but I understood that movie was like, at the time, the Venn diagram center of all the things in the world that I enjoyed. And for the next couple of months while I was working on my English, me and Joseph would walk around the field at lunch talking about, Jackie Chan's stunts, who would win in a fight between him and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rambo, who would move through an area faster between him and Sonic the Hedgehog. It was a really big deal for me. We had I have a box here that I started collecting then with, all the DVDs of pretty much every Jackie Chan movie from 1978 to the late 90s. I hadn't watched Supercop till we prepped for this interview, right? I watched the original language version with subtitles, and then I watched the hilariously dubbed version with kung fu fighting and the Mortal Kombat movie music and all the other things. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Excited to talk about this with you.
It's funny. We just did an episode, or I just released an episode with Anthony Shim where I was telling him about the same, like my Laserdisc days as well, because I grew up at Young and Steele's in the 80s, and there were a bunch of like karaoke equipment rental shops, and they all had Laserdiscs as well, because that's what karaoke machines used. And so they just ended up catering to both interests. And that's how I saw all the early John Woos. I'm pretty sure there was an Edward Yang movie flapping around in there. And it's incredible to have had an experience of a film in its original version and then watch, the Dimension Films Miramax dumbed down cut, and still like experience it with an audience that's just going crazy because it's all the visuals, right? Like it's Jackie Chan dubbing himself. It's fine. His English was never that great, and it works for the character. in both that and Rumble in the Bronx, because in both cases he's supposed to be out of his element and a fish out of water, and so struggling with the accent actually kind of works in any case. But the sheer physical virtuosity of a Jackie Chan movie, it's just glorious. I mean, he is, and the Keaton thing you mentioned, like he was always a prop comic. Jackie Chan's fight style is evasive and terrified, and it's really the smartest thing they ever did with him is let him lean into the comedy. And like Sammo Hung obviously knew that about him. They'd known each other their whole lives, but then once he started working with other directors who could also just kind of go with whatever flailing he wants to do, and sure, throw him on the end of a helicopter and just have him be, not low status. He is a super cop, or at least he keeps saying he is, but he is the guy who's going to die in every scene if he doesn't figure something out, right? Like he has absolutely no skills other than improvisation, which is phenomenal to translate into action.
Oh my God. I agree with everything you said. And I remember it felt so fresh for me then as a kid, and then as a teen, but even now watching it again, and recently having watched, like the Bourne movies or Bond or John Wick or anything, is how human Jackie is. He's always fighting from the bottom. There's always, he needs to kick your butt, but he also needs to make sure you don't drop the heirlooms that, he's fighting to protect, or he doesn't have shoes, or, he needs to get from here to there, but you're in the way. So you have guns. He wants to disarm you. Like he's always fighting from the bottom, and every scene feels like he's not quite ready. He's improvising. He's turning a rope ladder into a weapon, or he's, he in this movie in Supercop, climbing hills, climbing upstairs to get away from the bad guys or chase the bad guys. He's winded. He's struggling. He's perspiring. He doesn't have a plan. He gets to the top of the hill. James Bond would know what he wants to do. Jackie, I guess we're gonna jump and hope for the best, and then they get banged up and hurt. Like it's very human, and it's very, very endearing and empathetic.
And I mean, I think the other thing too that's helped with that is the end credit stuff, where you just actually watch the failed stunts and realize just how much punishment he puts himself through. I mean, at this point now, 30 odd years later, he can't move his face. Like he's damaged himself permanently for his art. But his art is so good that in the moment you almost want him to do more and take bigger risks, which is nuts, because no one should die for a movie. And the fact that Jackie Chan hasn't is some kind of weird triumph, that he is really working at an elite level with preparation and with padding and all this stuff that you don't see. But my God, the man he should be jelly. There's no way he survives every one of these things.
And for those listening, there's some great videos on YouTube on just, his stunt history and his injuries. It's absurd. And I think I also, in prepping for this, I listened to an interview which, he talked about how when he came out and everybody wanted him to be, the next Bruce Lee, which was quickly abandoned, but his focus was on his martial arts training. He was most interested in giving you great fight choreography. Then everybody kind of jumps in and is trying to do what he's doing, and he wants to up it. So he started to do stunts. Then he started to do stunts with vehicles. Then he started to jump off roofs onto moving planes, and nobody was doing that. So he he stayed in the other dimension. But I think, something that is interesting, if I may, is talk a little bit about kind of the origin of Jackie Chan. For those who don't know, he was born in Hong Kong. His father had to move to Australia when Jackie was very, very young, and Jackie was a very wild kid. And so the family decided that, with dad being away and Jackie being a handful, they would enroll him in the Jim Ewan China Drama Academy, which was a Peking opera school. And now we hear about all these actors who went through some like major conservatory, and you're like, oh, family must have had a lot of money and whatever. This was an orphanage that actually paid the family to adopt their kid because they were supported by getting the kids out to perform and putting on shows. But to get them ready was this incredible regiment of, it was like an army. It was wake up early, do this martial arts, then do stunts, then sing, then dance, then do it again. And because Jackie was the adopted son of the Sifu, of the master, anytime anybody screwed up, Jackie would have to do their punishment with them. So, you talk about this like 1,000 hours rule. Jackie put in thousands and thousands of hours singing, dancing, martial arts, weapons, stunts, what have you. In that school were Yuen Biao and Sammo Hung. Three of the biggest Hong Kong action stars in the world graduated from that year. Just remarkable. From that school, Jackie started to do stunts. He was hired by Sammo to be a stuntman on a couple of Bruce Lee productions. And then he was, discovered and started to star in his own vehicles. He did a number of just incredible kung fu movies back to back to back. Tried to break into Canada, into Hollywood with The Big Brawl and with Cannonball Run, which we can talk about. That wasn't the smartest way to showcase Jackie, having him fight on sand. Yeah. But then when he came back to Hong Kong, he wanted to do something different. He wanted to do something with stunts, and kind of that was the origin of the original Police Story.
Yeah, where he levels up, where he inserts himself into an existing genre structure and still manages to do Jackie Chan stuff, right? Like it's this fascinating, it's not an infection exactly of the genre by Jackie Chan, but it would be unthinkable now to see that movie with those stunts with anybody else in the lead. It's really kind of remarkable. And then from Police Story comes his entire career.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Police Story, I didn't know this. He first of all, Police Story 1 was nicknamed by the cast and crew Glass Story because the original. Did you know about this, Norm?
I'm just assuming it's got something to do with all the breaking glass, but is there something else?
You would be correct, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, because it is the thing I think of when I think of that movie.
Yeah, he talked about being in Hong Kong and seeing all these glass skyscrapers everywhere, and he just had this idea of like, well, what if I structure this movie around stunts that involve me smashing through and smashing people through glass?
It works. It works for him.
It totally works for him. So he did Police Story 1, he did more movies, he did Police Story 2, and then we come to Police Story 3 Supercop, which I think for me is the first time that I saw Jackie Chan not just doing stunts, but also really doing character work and playing someone who's a bit more complex. And of course, it being a two-hander with the incredible Michelle Yeoh. A fun little factoid about Michelle Yeoh there is her first on-camera role was actually with Jackie Chan in a watch commercial.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she's on a horse. He's on a motorcycle. They ride past. He thinks she's very beautiful. She gives him a smile. He crashes. And the watch is okay. So, that commercial actually got her discovered, and she signed on with this production company. She made Yes, Madam, retired to start a family. Mm-hmm. That didn't really happen. I guess we should be grateful because after 4 years of retirement, she came back with Police Story 3.
Yeah, and Police Story 3 is also the little tiny nexus of Yeoh's future, right? Because the biggest moments in Everything Everywhere All at Once are drawn from Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love, and that stars Maggie Cheung, and there she is,
I didn't realize.
playing May, the annoying girlfriend, who is not usually annoying, but in this film has to be for comedy reasons.
Yeah. Do we want to talk a little bit about the film and all the great action and moments, and just kind of
absolutely, it's your episode. Go wherever you want. Yeah.
Okay, man, because there's just so much which I think then could be just a fun launch pad, springboard. Thank you.
Whichever you
like.
Other
things.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So, well, Supercop, Police Story 3. Jackie reprises his role of Kevin Chan, a Hong Kong cop. He teams up with Michelle Yeoh's book Inspector Jessica Yang with a mission to earn the trust of a bad guy named Panther so he can get close to Panther's boss, Chaibot. There's shenanigans. There's many kicks and punches to the face. There's great stunts. There's slapstick comedy. Let me get into it. So, the dubbed version is interesting in that it's really kind of gotten a filter of like MTV 90s all over it.
Very much so.
Yeah, starting right from the get-go in this movie, we waste no time. Jackie arrives at the police station. His bosses say that what they need is a super cop. They say it, I think, 5 times in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
This bit I didn't totally get. Like, I didn't completely understand why they need to trick him into offering himself up as the super cop after 2 movies of him doing the craziest stuff in the world. Like, why the game of getting him to hear it through a slightly open door?
Yeah. Well, I think I know in the Hong Kong version, it's just explained that they don't expect that he'll take it because it's too dangerous, even for him, that anybody who takes this assignment is going to get shot in the face in the first 2 seconds. So they need to pump up how desperate it is in order to lure him to taking the job. But also, this is the one where it tilts full on into comedy. So sure. I think they're just playing with the audience's understanding as well of how preposterous it would be for there to be a challenge he can't handle. Because also at this point, he has a very high opinion of himself.
Right.
The whole acid washed look, I had forgotten about that.
Oh, it's such a good look.
Yeah, he shows up having walked out of a time machine from 6 months in advance of whenever they shot this thing. Like, he wants to look absolutely cutting edge. They've dressed him this way, and it just reads as ridiculous, which I think is great. Nobody else looks like this. He is a swaggering, he's high on his own supply after the first 2 movies. Which is even weirder in the American dub because he's just introduced for the first time this way. No one saw the first 2 movies. In 1995 when this came out, that's why they changed the title. But it works either way because you just want to see him get slapped around somehow.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Yeah, in 7th grade, I tried the Jackie Chan jean white shirt underneath look.
Everybody has a phase.
Yeah, it doesn't work as well when you're 6 foot, 130 pounds, soaking wet with acne. Really, it's not as cool. But yeah, no, you're right. So he takes the job. He goes off. We first of all, you're right. We meet his girlfriend, which I didn't know. I hadn't watched this movie in forever. In the Mood for Love. Mm-hmm. I mean, like many people, is one of my all-time favorite movies. I didn't realize that his girlfriend is played by the amazing Maggie Cheung.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't. Like, she's given absolutely nothing to do that challenges her acting ability, but yeah, it's like Marion Cotillard showing up in the Taxi films, this Luc Besson-produced Euro action series. It never really broke in North America, but I think that might have been the first thing I saw her in. And then she just kept coming back because she liked them. They were not challenging for her, and it was a good check. I can't really hold it against them. But then you see the other work they do, and it's like, oh, okay, these people are like genuine artists that just got tricked into being in an action movie for an hour.
Right. And she's great in it. You're right. She's given very little to do, but what she gets to do, she does an awesome job in. It's played a lot for comedy, and she kills it. But yeah, who would have thought that this person is going to be the same person that Wong Kar-wai leans on for a couple of the greatest films ever?
Yeah, and I also don't want to knock Maggie Cheung because she did make action movies as well, and she's very good at it. But it's just the role of May is so strange and just not for her. like not where you think she would be in any of these things.
Yeah, that's right. So Jackie takes the job off to meet Michelle Yeoh. Now, something kind of neat that I didn't know about this. So Jackie's a very competitive fellow. The stunt that he does at the end of the film, where he jumps off the roof and holds onto the ladder, was not originally scripted. He did it as a response to Michelle doing what was at the time far and away the biggest stunt in the film, which was her incredible motorcycle jump off the ramp onto a moving actual real life train with nothing but some boxes at the side of the road to protect her from death.
It's unbelievable that anyone would do it, but that she was allowed to do it. It's even worse. Like that,
incredible.
I'm approaching this as an insurance issue more than anything else, right? Like we all know Tom Cruise signed some kind of waiver so he can go off and try to kill himself in space. But the entire Hong Kong industry is about, faces and personalities, and every single one of them is putting themselves at risk for something.
Yeah.
In this movie.
Yeah, it's shocking, but just I think the whole philosophy of making action was so different in Hong Kong versus in Hollywood. And Jackie had a quote about this that I liked. He said that in Hollywood you'll spend 10 days doing the dialogue and 2 days doing the action. In Hong Kong, we'll spend 1 day doing the dialogue. We'll spend 20 weeks the action. Like just the focus is the balance is completely different. 15 minutes in, so we meet Michelle Yeoh. There's a little bit of, I don't know, do you think that this is a little bit of a dig that he's doing towards China? Kind of he sits down and everybody over there is so by the book and so organized, and he's this kind of like free spirit, or am I reading too much into it?
It definitely feels like that. There's also some casual stuff about, when China reclaims Hong Kong in 1997, all of this will be moot anyway. There's definitely a feeling like he's going to, and by he, I mean Jackie Chan, the producer actor, not the character he's playing, is quietly saying he doesn't plan to change. And his whole thing was then moving to America and making the Rush Hour films as a way of getting away from whatever was going to happen in 97.
Right.
So maybe even then he's sort of signaling his intentions of just not being able to be co-opted by a communist government.
Yeah. And I understand that his politics have changed quite a bit. I
have heard this as well. Yeah.
I have not, I like to keep my Jackie Chan 1995 Jackie Chan. So I don't know what he's said, but yeah, at this point, I think, yeah, you're right. He's having a little bit of fun in there. The first big action set piece of the film happens when Michelle Yeoh takes him to the training facility and asks him to do a little demonstration against just the most intimidating, jacked up soldier man ever.
Captain America, basically.
Captain America. And this, talking about Jackie Chan's vulnerability and his humanity in his action scenes, like we see that here on full display. He doesn't want to fight this guy. He just wants to do a little bit of like, I'll touch you here, you touch me there. We'll smile and show them our moves a little bit, but this guy's not having it and is going for broke. And you have this escalation happening throughout this fight where Jackie seems to hit him back almost as like an involuntary response, rather than trying to win, really.
Yeah, his defense mechanisms kick in.
His defense mechanism kicks in, and he gives him a little something. Of course, that fight scene ends, and Jackie ends up being rolled away for a fun little comedic beat where he's hanging upside down on a tree.
These things happen. And it happened to him all the time. And there's that rolling wheel thing that he sort of just gets stuck in. And it's hard to figure out, honestly, whether it's intentional or not. He plays it as though it's not, but maybe it's just a way of short-circuiting the actual fight, because that would also be in character.
Yeah. Yep. It's great. And then like this movie doesn't really waste any time, eh? Like right from this, we're straight off meeting the bad guy, Yuan Wa's Panther, who, by the way, is also a graduate of Jackie's school. The man has over 60 major action credits and again was a Bruce Lee stuntman. I wonder if he got cast as a villain largely because of his facial hair. It's tremendous in this film. It's very, very good.
He has a great look. He has a great presence.
Got a
And,
great
you
look.
know, you also, it's one of those things where you've seen him in enough movies that you kind of know immediately what to expect, but also you're excited to see him. He's, you know, he brings value. He does not bring anything negative at all. It's like, oh, this guy's going to be punchy. Something's going to happen. He's going to fight with people. And inevitably we get exactly that. But he's also, his character is amazingly logical, which I love. He is probably smarter than the heroes, but only directed in the direction of crime. So obviously that's his Achilles heel. But he actually does think through the obstacles and objections before they happen. I was really impressed this time through. It's just like, no, this is a good adversary. And in the end, he's sort of just there to set up Chaibat anyway. But I like him. He's fun. And when he gets sidelined, you kind of miss him.
Absolutely. And we get to have all that kind of fun, both in this scene coming up now where Jackie helps him with his jailbreak, and then later on where Jackie and Michelle and Panther are on the boat, where, you know, Panther has no issue killing cops and running through them. Jackie needs to keep his trust, but also protect everybody's lives. And again, you have this interesting kind of dynamic where Jackie's fighting and trying to do his thing, but also has that other layer of trying to keep people safe and not give up the game. And I love that scene, by the way, where they're running up the hill, where Jackie and Panther have to get away from the cops, and it's a steep incline, and they can barely do it.
Yeah, they're escaping a mining facility where the police pursuing them are in a mine car and they're on foot. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult, to say the least. But you get this worn down exasperation. It's actually weirdly similar to a scene in John Wick Chapter 4, which has this set piece involving just stairs, really, just the steps up to the destination that becomes its own Sisyphean challenge, I suppose. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't want to give anything away, but it is just exceptionally good at mixing and matching complication and exhaustion in the same way. And then watching Supercop again, I was thinking, hang on, this couldn't possibly be. There's no way this was inspired. But then how could I be sure, right? It's entirely possible that they did think about it. I'd love to ask them. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah.
Because so much of Jackie Chan's films have stunts that feel unreplicable, irreplicable. I don't even know what the proper term is. Like, there's no way you could do this again with anybody else, but you can use the lessons in your own choreography going forward and figure stuff out that way.
For sure. And something that he was doing in this movie that also I don't see very much about. I'm curious if John Wick does that, if they're, you know, specifically studying Jackie in any way, is he really sells his injury and exhaustion. It really carries over from one scene to the next. Like, it's a personal pet peeve of mine in action movies when, you know, you've just fallen off whatever, or you've climbed whatever hill, and then the sequence ends. Next scene in our timeline takes place minutes later, and you're fresh.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my twice-weekly newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Production's been a little spotty these past couple of weeks, but I'm getting back on the horse with Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Arrow Video's restoration of Michael Mann's Black Cat, and Paramount's 4K box set of all the Transformers movies, because apparently I have a masochistic streak. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Simcast Twitter account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. The John Wick films have come up with a whole mythology around that. Like, all the suits are bulletproof and impact resistant, so you can shoot someone in the chest and they'll fall down, but they'll get back up again without a wound, without being winded. Also, there's at least one movie where somebody just gets shot after shot of adrenaline to just keep them on their feet, and someone says as much, like, this will give you 12 hours, but then you're going to collapse. And it's all we need, right? I mean, none of this is real, but the way that Jackie Chan gets hurt and acknowledges it, I don't think anybody else I mean, you think about the way Chow Yun-fat comes off in action sequences where he just, in the John Woo movies especially, where he just waltzes into a room in that trench coat and he's indestructible.
Yeah.
There's nothing that will slow this guy down. Plus the sunglasses, right? And you never really see him. But Jackie Chan looks scared and worried all the time. And it sells it. It makes him so relatable as an action hero. I don't know if anybody else... Daniel Craig does it as Bond. Like he played hurt. He let the injuries pile up over the years in a way that made sense. But yeah, it's just not something you see in the 90s at all.
No. And it's also the mugging. Like Jackie Chan is one of the few actors that, can basically turn to the camera with a completely befuddled expression. And never once will that break your enjoyment or the believability of the world he's building. He can just do that. It's pretty much him and Jerry in my book.
Yeah, and it is like I was thinking of Frank Tashlin and the elaborate 60s comedies he made where a kind of a rubber reality is sort of essential to it, where it just the world can bend around your hero because your hero is experiencing everything so intensely that it's fine to fall down a flight of stairs and bounce back up.
Right.
And it's like the Gene Kelly thing, right? The physical grace can apply to almost anything once you have the confidence to try it in a scene. And yeah, Jackie Chan will just do something casually with one hand while he's fighting somebody. He's like reaching behind him for something. And the act of reaching and the gesticulation on his hand is so elaborate and ridiculous that your eye is drawn to it. And it's just like, oh, he's panicking. And it's not, it's part of the gag, but it's all building into that same persona every time, movie after movie after movie. And then once they realized it could be used as comedy, it just takes off.
Absolutely. And, I sometimes wonder, like, what, where's the next action hero that's going to be able to kind of bring in that comedy, draw on the work of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and what was the one where he was hanging from the clock?
Oh, Harold Lloyd.
Oh no, I'm thinking of Project A.
I'm thinking the Jackie Chan one. Yeah, no, I was going for the original. Yeah,
you can see his influences. You can see his love of all the silent film heroes, and a lot of his work and a lot of his stunts are just straight taking something that he loved, like Harold Lloyd hanging off that clock tower, which he managed to do with optics, but actually being like, I'm going to do this for real. I'm going to hang off this clock tower and I'm going to fall through multiple awnings, break my spine, get up and do it 2 more times to get it perfect.
It's amazing he's not dead.
And I don't want to sound like a film snob about the John Wick movies, but like what I don't love about the John Wick movies and a lot of action is exactly what I love so much about Jackie Chan's action, which is the clarity of it all. Like, I love that a hallmark of a classic Jackie Chan movie is the camera is locked up in a wide and we see everything. We see the attack, we see the impact, we see the fallout, we see it all. It's not constantly cutting and moving the camera to hide the thing. In fact, have you seen the Every Frame a Painting video on Jackie Chan's action?
No.
So it's
I know the guy, but I haven't seen this one. No.
Yeah. So Every Frame a Painting is just a great channel for those who don't know. He does a really great deep dive into whatever aspect of filmmaking. He does this one on Jackie, and he called out something that once you see it, you will always see it. It's not really prevalent in Police Story 3, but certainly in like the more kind of martial arts heavy ones like Drunken Master 2. Mm-hmm. Jackie loves clarity in his action. So there's fights where he will show the attack in a wide, see it land, but then cut in close and show the hit a second time.
Yeah.
Never in Hollywood do you do that. If anything, in Hollywood, oftentimes you don't see the impact. You see the punch going, you see the head reacting, and then we see the person kind of flying away. Jackie will make sure that we're seeing the cool bits twice so that they really register. In this movie, I think the only time he really does something like that is for Michelle Yeoh's jump.
It's the motorcycle jump. Yeah, that was the only thing I could think of too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that stuff is great. As I'm going back to the comfortable handhold of my plot summary.
No, it's fine.
No, yeah.
There's no wrong answers in this thing.
Okay. I just did this movie and for a director that was very intimidating, and she's like improvise, and I was like, I like lines written, and that's how I like to go back to the comfort of like, what does the script say? Um anyway, yeah, so after the whole thing with Panther, we go to Jackie's hometown for a bit of comedy where all the side characters that we met so far, his boss, the inspector, everybody is playing members of Jackie's family, and Jackie doesn't know where anything is or how to get anywhere, and meanwhile has to lead Panther and his crew
yes, to a family home he's never been to.
That's right. And we have some wonderful, wonderful outdated humor, like Jackie's boss playing his mom.
Yeah.
That's stuff that doesn't really work today, but it's all a setup for another giant brawl. At 36 minutes into the film, we have this incredible sequence where finally, for the first time, we get to see Michelle Yeoh just fully unleashed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see there's some folks that recognize Panther. Michelle and Jackie have to stop them because they want Panther to survive, so we can follow him to his lair and meet his boss. And there's a great sequence here that I love, especially where Jackie and Panther are being led off in cuffs. Michelle jumps through the air, kicks two people in the head, lands, does this beautiful kung fu pose. One of the bad guys sees her, goes into his own complex kung fu pose, and Jackie, just watching all this peacocking, just kicks the man in the back of the head, and off they go.
Yeah,
love that bit.
It's his equivalent of the market scene in Raiders, right? Like, just find the simplest answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Solve the problem, and and the audience just gets to respect that.
Exactly. And yeah, then we're off and we meet Chaibot, who we meet in just the best possible classic villain way. He's playing video games. Panther's all excited. I have these two badasses here for you, Chaibot. Chaibot gives him one look and goes, throw them in the ocean.
Yeah, they're cops. Don't trust them.
Yeah. And we also meet one of my favorite Jackie Chan collaborators here. We meet Ken Lo, playing Chaibot's Heavy. And now Ken Lo, if you've seen Drunken Master 2, so one of my favorite all-time sequences in cinema, and I think my number one Jackie Chan sequence is the factory battle at the end of Drunken Master 2.
Okay.
And Ken Lo is that kickboxer in there who introduces himself by extending his leg vertically in the air over his head and then just beating the ever-loving crap out of Jackie. And he'll do some of that in this movie here. By the way, Ken Lo also was discovered as he was a doorman at a club that Jackie liked to go out to. And Jackie was so impressed with him that he hired him as his real-life bodyguard.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then eventually just cast him in stuff? Just
yeah,
worked his way in?
Realized that, well, the man is an actual kickboxing monster and looks like $1 million bucks. And Jackie was like, hey, how would you also like to be a action superhero?
I mean, it makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Jumping back to the film, you mentioned Quentin Tarantino, and in my little bit of research for Police Story 3, I found that actually in an interview that Quentin Tarantino did, I believe in the early 2000s, he was asked, what if you could pick one scene or one sequence, I forget how it was worded and how it was phrased for him, but if you could pick one sequence to show humanity for the rest of our existence or send off into outer space, what would it be? And Tarantino chose the last 20 minutes of Police Story 3 Supercop. And to give you a rundown of why this is really like this sequence coming up really feels like a best of Jackie Chan all boiled into one movie. You know, the story beat that takes us here is Panther finds out that Michelle and Jackie are have infiltrated. Sorry, Chaibot finds out about this, and they decide to do a trade. Maggie Chung, Jackie's girlfriend, in exchange for Chaibot's wife, who has been sentenced to death in a dramatic court scene sequence that has been just plopped into the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
they had a set. You might as well.
Yeah. So like a lot of what's about to happen. I mean, I think, I asked some questions about the logic at the start of the film, but I think at this point, any questions that the viewer might have can just be answered with, so the movie can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is perfect because we have freaking helicopters to get to. So the bad guy is holding Maggie at gunpoint in a helicopter for some reason.
Hostage swap.
To do
Chaibot's wife is more valuable than Jackie's girlfriend. Let's go.
That's right.
That's
right. That's the deal. We're on board. We're ready. Let's go. Jackie stops traffic, jumps over barrels. Maggie Chung gets very unceremoniously tossed off of the helicopter.
Which, again, realism and terrifying.
Realistic and terrifying. And then the stunts beginning with Jackie stealing a car in just the coolest way possible. I'll never get tired of Jackie jumping the length of the car casually to land in the driver's seat and just taking off.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, that fits his prop comedy thing, right? Like, this is in front of me. How do I get around it? What do I do? And the answer is as fast as possible.
Yeah, like I'm not a parkour guy, but I'd love to talk to parkour people and learn about like how much of that stuff did he originate? Is he the granddaddy of parkour? Because that man can run up a tree, run up like the side of a wall, jump through a tiny opening and back down like it's nobody's business.
I could see it evolving from him. Absolutely. I mean, there must have been other people doing the same thing at the same time, but he, like, that style of his dates back to the early 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's just amazing. And coming up now, very amazing, is a stunt that apparently nearly killed Michelle Yeoh. So Jackie is in the car, which he just jumped into in the coolest way possible. Michelle is hanging on to the bad guy's van, actually hanging on, not a safety rig, not like a VFX thing, no sidecar, just she is hanging on to this thing and the car is moving on a highway.
Yep.
Michelle said that because they were in a hurry to shoot this sequence, they couldn't close off the highway. So they had their own drivers, but then they also had folks like me or you on our way to work. Can you imagine?
I know. Every single shot of this reel of the film should simply have "This is real" flashing above and below the subtitle bar.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, the bad guys aren't suckers. They're trying to shake Michelle Yeoh off, and shake them off they do. And Michelle has to jump off because they're shooting up at her. She has to jump off and land on Jackie Chan's car and hang on. And the first time she did it, she missed because, she's a human person still. And she said, rolled off and got under the wheel of the car. And the only thing that stopped her is Jackie barely made it to grab her and kind of redirect her fall a little bit. And that's why, Jackie calls her one of the two women he is most scared of in the world. Just absolutely ridiculous. And then the rooftop stuff happens. They're chasing the bad guys onto the roof. Jackie throws Panther in real life onto just like concrete, one story down. They're on the train. Michelle jumps onto the train, nearly dies again. You see her in the outtakes just like falling off onto cardboard boxes. And Jackie jumps onto a moving helicopter, onto a rope ladder. Now, do you know, is this all him or did they use some stunt people or body doubles in this thing.
There is at least one body double visible in the end credits.
Okay.
I don't know how much of it. I'm assuming like the big wide shots, you just wouldn't have Jackie Chan doing that. And obviously they're strapped in and they're as secure as they could be. But I'm assuming there's a day or two when it's just Jackie's just not getting on that thing at all.
Right.
And they had somebody else. And the hairline is a little different on the body double, so you can tell in the wide shots. But it's
Norm
also
Wilner
there's well, big enough screen. But and there's also some clear work where it's just, he's reacting on a rope ladder in a studio with maybe, a foot off the ground, so he doesn't look like he's standing still. But he is, when he's flying around on a rope ladder, when that is Jackie Chan on the rope ladder on a helicopter, that is Jackie Chan on the rope ladder on the helicopter. There's a mind-boggling level of documentary to the last reel of this film, where you just can't. Some part of your brain cannot reconcile the reality with the fact that you're watching a movie. Like, suspension of disbelief is actually fighting the experience of watching this movie, which I think is why it's so thrilling. Because, even the first time I saw it, I know Jackie Chan was still making movies. I know he's walking around out there. There's obviously he will be fine. But what if he isn't? And your brain is just screaming. Like, you're gonna fall. This is wrong. This is not what you did. This is a stuntman's job.
There's so many sequences in here that are nothing, that if I attempted, like, there's a shot earlier on in the film where Jackie like jumps through a window, closes the window behind him, and Michelle like jumps at the window, it's closed, it falls down, and I would have broken myself in 80 different places and would have had a permanent limp. And Jackie jumps on this rope ladder, and the next thing that happens is he narrowly avoids like the smokestack of the train, gets hung up on this pole, and then narrowly avoids the helicopter coming back at him, which, talking about him getting hurt, he didn't the first take, and he dislocated his cheek.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, I also didn't know you could do that. That's interesting. He dislocated his cheek and kept on going. Yeah.
I mean,
just ridiculous.
Someday we will find out that he's, that there's what's the movie? There's a horror movie called Triangle from like 2010, with Melissa George, and there's this amazing. It's a time loop story, and it's not even the big reveal of the plot, but it's the most disturbing image in it is that it's a time loop story where it doesn't reset. So every time somebody dies, the body is thrown on a pile, and there's a body of hundreds of the same person just piled up. And it's this one shot, and then it gets past it, and you're not supposed to think of it again. And it's all I can ever think about this movie. It's a throwaway gag that is so horrifying. And I keep thinking when I'm watching a Jackie Chan movie that there is a giant pit of Jackie Chan somewhere.
Oh my God.
And they just keep making more of them because he's dying on every one of these things. And that's the thrill, right? Like, you're literally watching the man cheat death.
Yeah. It's like The Prestige, but with Jackie. Yeah. Oof.
You are watching Jackie Chan cheat death, not his character. And I think that's why it's so thrilling.
Yep. You know who also is cheating death, though, in those sequences is, and you see this in the outtakes, is the camera people.
Yeah.
They show in the outtakes under the amazing Tom Jones rendition of Kung Fu Fighting in the dubbed version.
Yeah, Miramax knew how to give the people what they wanted.
That's right. But yeah, they have this fellow waving all happy, but he's just on like an apple box in the sky or something? He's like on some plywood, but like hanging off a crane to get some aerial footage of the helicopter and Jackie flying by. Yeah, different kind of filmmaking, and nobody works harder to entertain you, to give you a bang for your buck than Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh. Just unbelievable.
It is. And it is just it's an incredible accomplishment, and one that 30 years later is still just stunningly entertaining. I mean, even with the warts, even with the jokes that don't quite land and the weird, and that one throwaway shot, which I remember it might have been Bob Weinstein, somebody at the time being incredibly proud of, that they cut the shot of the dog market out of the Hong Kong version. And that was their big moment of, sensitivity in 1995 was cutting that for American audiences. And I think also in Drunken Master 2, they cut out the very last punchline, which, simply doesn't, he's had so much alcohol now that he's mentally disabled. You have to find a way around that. And I get it. And it's just a different type of humor. And I think there's a couple of R-word jokes in the, in Supercop. Yeah. In the Hong Kong version, at least.
Yeah. And in this one, they cut out a George Bush dig.
Oh, that's
and it's
not in the American.
No. In the scene where all the bad guys are, busting each other's balls and all that, they one person says something like, "Who do you think I am, George Bush?"
Yeah,
he says that. Sorry, in the subtitled version.
Yeah.
But in the American version, "Who do you think I am, Fidel Castro?" Obviously, that was not the original intention.
That's how long it's been since I saw that version. I don't remember that bit.
I think to your point too, the older kind of films like that really stand up, like all the action kind of stuff with the CGI starts to date, but the stuff where they're really, really doing it, and it's kind of the same as like watching a Ghibli film versus watching like an old CGI movie. You see a Ghibli film and you see all the artistry that went, all the craft into making this food look amazing and making the hair move and making the little background details animate and do their thing, just so to give you a sense of this world, to really fill it out and make it alive. You see that kind of dedication to craft and compare it to some of the Hollywood stuff that was coming out at the time, where everything is perfectly still except for the characters' mouths and eyes. And yes, it's 3D, but is it better? And Jackie wanted to do everything for real and would do it 1,000 times if it meant doing it a little bit better, catching that fan a little bit smoother, getting into that car a little bit slicker. Even though it's not the big showpiece, it's not the big action thing, but it all is cumulative and it all gives you this incredible sense of, suspending your disbelief and believing that this person is Superman.
Yeah. And the other thing too that you get is that even if you do these nowadays, people won't believe that it isn't accentuated with or helped along or smoothened in some way with digital work, because we just assume it, we just accept that it is. And for the most part, that's fine, because on some level it means people are safe. It means you can do it without the risk to life and limb. But the fact that that's baked in as an element, that these are long shots with no wires, where there's clearly nothing underneath these people except more ground. It's thrilling. It's like it's Buster Keaton organizing a house to fall on him and making sure he stands in the right place. At that level of prep and the level of skill that goes into making something look like an accident is unmatched, I think.
I totally agree. Norm, I'm going to ask you a question that I would want to hear if I was listening to this podcast and I had Norm Wilner on my podcast.
Shoot.
I'm going to go full high fidelity here and go Desert Island top 5. I want to learn about Hong Kong action. You know what? No, I want to learn action. Top 5 Norm Wilner off the top of his head. Action flicks to check out for a good time.
Oh my God. My concept of action is so, like, you mean physical? Does Die Hard count? Is Die Hard an action movie?
Yeah, of course it does.
Because Die Hard,
if you think it counts, it counts.
It's like, because it's so, like, Die Hard is a machine, but it's also just such a rich. Die Hard is the one that I think about where I don't think they meant to invent an entire genre, but they did, and it's still unsurpassed.
Absolutely.
Unless you maybe look at the other version, which is Speed, the stripped down version, which is also just an exquisite experience, and from the cinematographer of Die Hard, which makes all the sense in the world.
And structurally exactly the same beats at exactly the same places. Speed and Die Hard are identical.
And it's based in rivalry. The only difference, I think the key difference in Speed is the romance, right? The Sandra Bullock is there and she's as competent as the hero, and there's nobody else in Die Hard because he's fighting to save his marriage. So he doesn't have the same, the sense of spark and discovery that Reeves and Bullock have is the thing that distinguishes Speed even more than the fact that they came up with a vertical version or a horizontal version of Die Hard, where it's moving, in a straight line, but it's on the ground rather than up and down. God, I don't know. And this is one of those things where I realize I don't know enough about the action films of the 50s and 60s to pick a good one, because there were some great, like Steamboat Bill Jr. or The General. Those are action movies, right? Like The General is the one that I'd start with. I'm sure it didn't invent the modern action film, but it's the blueprint. That it's like the difference between It Happened One Night and His Girl Friday, where they're both screwball comedies. They're both romances, but in It Happened One Night, you have the raw materials, which are still fantastic, but will 10 years later be refined into something. Or maybe It Happened One Night in the Philadelphia Story, where you just see how it's all going to be, and then something comes along and puts it all together. Or Casablanca, like the moment where a genre is created, where it gels. I'm also like, I keep thinking of something like, Terminator. It's not an action movie. It's
Terminator 1 or Terminator 2?
The first one. The second one is absolutely an action movie. The first one is a thriller because long stretches of time pass between set pieces, and T2 is just like a roller coaster. But by focusing on
which would you put in your top 5 though? Because you have to pick between T2 and T1. As
an action movie, I guess it would probably be Terminator 2, even though it owes so much to Terminator. Like, it doesn't work if you haven't seen Terminator, for a million different reasons, but mostly because of the gag of Schwarzenegger being the hero in the second one.
Because here, the parameter of this little thought experiment, if I make, this is very selfish. This is me now interviewing Norman, wanting to know what to watch next. Is I'm off to a desert island. I can carry 5 discs with me.
Oh.
I don't need the history of cinema. I need 5 action movies that I can watch and rewatch while eating my coconuts.
Yeah, and I'm terrible at this because my brain is like, well, take a hard drive. Like, take as much as you can.
No hard drives. They don't work on this desert island.
But there's a DVD player that works?
Yeah. There's a DVD player, and there's one TV, and there's enough wires. And there's a lazy boy.
Okay.
But, I mean, there's no internet.
God, I don't know. Like, I just keep thinking about all the ones. I just keep thinking about all the ones I haven't seen yet, right? Like, I would go with, and Hardboiled. Hardboiled is a blast.
Yeah.
And these are also all movies that are like 80s and 90s, which is unfair because there's other stuff since and before. And
That's though.
I'm just like aware I'm going to pick my favorites, and my favorites won't be representative of what's really out there. Like, do I go with The Raid or do I go with Ong Bak? Or do I go with Dread, which actually is the English language version of The Raid, but has a sense of humor that The Raid doesn't have?
You know what? Can I tell you, I'm so happy that you said Dread. I thought that movie was hugely ignored.
It was
a great film. It was a great film, and it really was the Raid, and it worked great.
Yeah, they just released it at the wrong time of year. I think if it had opened in the summer, it would have been a hit. And they didn't worry so much about people not knowing who Judge Dredd is, because it doesn't matter. It's an action movie. You're introducing a new guy. That's fine.
Okay. Well, I mean, you basically have 5, but then from Jackie Chan's filmography, what would you go with?
I would go with Supercop. No question. It's the one you can't believe you're watching. The other ones are all fun and interesting and engaging for the most part. Like Armor of God is a great time. But yeah, no, while you're watching Supercop, you're gonna throw up out of terror as much as you're enjoying it, because you know there's no way this ends well. My thanks to Dan Abramovici, who's all over the place these days. Go take a look at Ben's at Home if you get the chance. It's available to rent and buy on Apple TV, and it co-stars Ruth Goodwin, who you may know from this very podcast. You can find Dan on Twitter at Dan_Abramovici, and you can find Supercop in a brand new 4K Blu-ray special edition from 88 Films. It's also streaming on the Criterion Channel as part of a very cool Michelle Yeoh collection, and available to rent or buy on various VOD platforms. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next week.